joy to give thanks to God together. I have to admit in all honesty that Friday I wasn't exactly sure that I'd be here to sing and rejoice with you together. On Friday I went to a meeting at another retirement community. It's called Tell-Hi in Honeybrook, Pennsylvania. Does anyone know where Honeybrook, Pennsylvania is? There are a few of you who know. They say it's God's country. I think it's beyond God's country. I mean, the directions were incredible. I remember them. Go down Route 663. Turn on to Route 73. Take Route 73 to Route 100. Take Route 100 to Route 23. When you get off Route 23, bear left onto Beaver Dam Road. That'll bend and become Frog Hollow Lane. But later on, it'll still become Sterner's Mill Road, and you'll see beyond the Red Barn, Tell-Hi Community. Well, I have to confess, I got lost. Well, I was lucky, or fortunate, or blessed. I had a little gizmo in my car. It's called a GPS. I think it's Global Positioning System, I'm not sure, but it's this electronic technology where you can get it out and punch in the address of the place that you're going. And through satellite technology, it'll tell you, there's a tiny little woman in there, I think, because it's a woman's voice who says, go straight for 0.5 miles. Turn left and 0.2 miles. Well, I got to Tell-Hi Community. After the meeting, I was smart enough, or scared enough, that I punched in the location of Peter Becker Community in order to get home. So I came straight here. But it really can be sometimes a challenge getting to the places that we want to go. And it's often easy to get lost, quite frankly, if you're not familiar with not just where you're going, but how to get there. The roads, the paths, the journey on the way. Well, I was thinking about this GPS system and saying, you know, it's wonderful that you can do that to find the roads, to travel in a car. Wouldn't it be great if we could create a GPS system for our own journey of life? For the trip that we're taking day in and day out as we live this blessing of life that God gives us. Some kind of gizmo like a GPS that will give us daily help in the decisions that we're going to make. That will give us help in the daily situations that we're going to face and how to cope with them and how to respond. That would assist us in our relationships with our spouses or our friends or our family. That would really guide us in what to say and what to do and how to act. Well, part of the good news that I'm here to share with you this morning is that God, through Jesus Christ, is way ahead of us on that one. The Gospel of John, the 14th chapter that we just read and heard, talks to us about a divine GPS. Do you remember the Gospel of John, the 14th chapter, where I read, Jesus said, I am the way and the truth and the life. You see, we can find our way each day in the journey of life that is unique and individual for each of us by getting directions and guidance from God's own heavenly GPS. And by that I mean God's precious Son. God's precious Son is here to show us each the way on our daily journeys. And the great news is, among other things, he's not powered by electricity. His battery will never run low. You don't need to plug him into an electric socket or into a car, because he is powered by divine, unlimited love. God's precious Son, our GPS, powered by divine love. Limitless power, limitless love, limitless guidance for us in our daily lives and decisions, on our journey, as I'm calling it. God's precious Son is here to lead us and guide us and help us. Whether at any particular time we happen to be living in personal care, we happen to be volunteering at Grandview Hospital, we're gardening in the yard, we're working in the office, wherever we happen to be and whatever we happen to be doing, God's GPS is there to show us the way to live. Is there to comfort us in our times of challenge and sadness. Is there to encourage us each and every day and every moment. What a blessing this is. I recently read a report, and some of you might identify with the history of this, of a United States soldier who was in a prison camp in the Philippines. And he was able to escape from that prison camp that was up apparently in the mountains of jungles and hills and horrible kinds of physical challenges. And he found a native man who would help him in trying to get back to his own people, to the United States Army. And these two men, the native man went first, and the American soldier went second, and they worked their way through brushes and bushes and horrible kinds of undergrowth. The native first, the American next. They crossed through valleys, they went up mountains. It was exhausting until finally that American soldier stopped the native and said, "Are you sure that this is the way home?" And that native Filipino said in broken English, "There is no way home. I am your way home. If you want to go home, if you want to be free, then you need to follow me." Isn't it that way for us in our lives? Not that we necessarily feel like prisoners, but how important it is for us to follow Jesus and follow his values and follow his guidance and keep our eyes always on him, not just on a Sunday morning, or not just when we go to Bible study at Peter Becker, or not just when we say our prayers at night, but to keep our eyes constantly on God's precious Son and how he would have us act and respond to life and the journey that we have. I am the way, the truth, and the life, he says to us. Each of us. I am the way for Linda. I am the way for Muriel. I am the way for Ray. I am the way for Nancy. It's that personal. God's relationship with us and what he has done for us in and through Jesus Christ, including his saving act on Calvary's Hill, is not a blanket action, it is personal. And it is our gift, our blessing, and our charge to keep our eyes on that divine Son, God's precious Son, and what he would have us do. Our journeys will change. It might look different to us from childhood to adolescence to adulthood. Things change with our relationships, with our spouses or our children or our co-workers or our friends. We're going to, throughout our lifetimes, have some amazing joys and some heartbreaking sorrows. But God's precious gift is here with each of us. Each of those moments, each of those situations, each of those relationships, each of those challenges. God's precious Son is with you as well as with me. What a blessing. What a gift. What good news. And what a charge to keep our eyes day by day, moment by moment on that GPS and what God would have us do through Jesus' example. Some of our actions might be done together on a daily basis. Here at Peter Becker, and I know not everyone is from Peter Becker, we welcome and rejoice in visitors' presence. But here at Peter Becker, we did something together. As an example, we gathered food for the local food pantries. And for me, that is following Jesus' example of feeding the hungry. I was hungry and you fed me, Jesus said. Today's offering, we're doing this together. Today's offering is for Liberty Ministries, which is ministries to the prisons, so that people can go there and teach Bible studies and lead worship and be spiritual mentors to those who are incarcerated in prisons. And we do that together in response to following the example of God's GPS. The benevolent activity that we do for those who really need help. That's something we do together. When Jesus says, I was poor and you clothed me. I was sick and you healed me. I was lonely and you visited me. Those are things that we can do together, and we thank God for those blessings and those opportunities when we follow God's GPS. But not all of those things that we would do would be as a group, because we're not a group all the time. We're in our rooms. We're at work. We're in the dining room. We're other places. and in those times were just as much called and gifted and blessed to follow God's precious Son. I'm sure many of you have heard of Mother Teresa. She's a Roman Catholic, was a Roman Catholic nun and incredible minister to the extent that she took her ministry and her calling seriously. And very often that led her personally to minister to the poor and to the ill and to those who were struggling. When she was asked why she personally did these things, this is what she said. I see Jesus in every human being. I say to myself, this is hungry Jesus. I must feed him. This is sick Jesus. I must help him. This is lonely Jesus. I must visit with him. I serve because I follow Jesus, I love Jesus, and I follow his way. Her GPS led her to personal service day after day, year after year. And for us who gather here today, we have many opportunities to serve, to follow Jesus and his example. It might not be through service to people with leprosy in India, as it might have been for Mother Teresa. But in her words, it might be to the lonely Jesuses that we encounter in our daily lives, in the hallways, in the dining rooms, in their residences, or in the neighborhood, reaching out to those lonely Jesuses. It might be that we're called to minister to the frightened Jesus. People with failing health, with financial challenges and fears, people who are facing change and are understandably scared by what the future might be. What would Jesus do? What does he call us to do? It might be on a daily basis, us being called as individuals to minister to the grieving Jesus. Those who have suffered a loss of a dear, dear friend, or a spouse, or a child, or a neighbor. Or perhaps someone is grieving over their physical limitations, or their loss of job, or limited independence. But we would be called to minister in the example of God's precious Son, to turn on our faithful GPS and respond on a daily, moment-by-moment basis. If we see Jesus in each person we meet and interact with, in each conversation that we have, in each situation that we deal with, in each challenge that we face, then we can use God's precious Son to set ourselves in the right direction, to guide our conversations and our decision-making, to give other people and us comfort and peace and hope. Is that not a gift? An incredible gift? When Jesus said, I am the way, the truth, and the life, he was not telling his disciples, someday it will be through me that you will eventually come to God. He said, I am the way. That's today. Jesus is our guide on our journey today May 18th, 2014. He is the way for Reuben or Gretchen or Dick or any of us and all of us. His divine example, His love, His forgiveness, His caring, because He displayed God's love. We are blessed in our journeys to do the same. Finally, let's just think for a second about maybe those people in Scripture did have something special going back in the early Christian church. Some of you know that I call it a flavor. I happen to be a Lutheran. Some of you might be Methodist, some of you might be Roman Catholics, some of you might be Presbyterians. But you know, in the early church, they didn't call themselves Lutherans, nor Presbyterians, nor Roman Catholics. Does anyone remember what they called themselves? Followers of the way. Followers of the way. And if we can stick to reading and listening to our divine GPS, God's perfect Son, and allow Him to lead us and guide us by His example in our conversations, our challenges, and our joys, then we will glorify God. And we will be like those early Christians, followers of the way. That way being God's precious Son. And indeed we will come to the Father. Amen.